I hope everyone's doing great. I hope you've got your poi, and I hope you are ready to move around a little bit. Today, we're going to do a little recap of the things that we learned last time so everyone can kind of remember, get up to speed, all that sort of stuff. And then we are going to talk a little bit about turning. And I talked about everything last time as pieces of momentum. Hi, Cynthia. So I talked last time a lot about momentum, and we're going to learn turning with 3 levels of momentum as well. So little recap for last time. We talked about, as the 3 levels of momentum, stalls, so your poi is not moving at all, which is actually a really wondrous thing that I love exploring. We talked about pendulums, which is periodic momentum. It's momentum that keeps stopping. There's a stall at each end. It stops and chooses to go in another direction. So that's periodic momentum. And then we talked about circles, which is a consistent momentum. And that's what a lot of people jump to right away. But it's really cool to understand this using all 3 different types of momentum. So we also talked last time a little bit about the poi relative to you, which is stuff like your planes. You have your wheel plane, which is your poi spinning next to you, like you're in a car or you're in a wheelchair. You've got the wall plane, which is in front of you. It's kind of like you walked up to a wall and you're standing right in front of it. And then also, we can go into this a little more later, but you have the floor plane, or you could call it the ceiling plane if you wanted to do it above your head. Something that's a little bit different. We're not going to dive into that much right now. Also, when you talk about poi relative to you, a lot of people talk about spinning forwards, which is kind of like you're imagining jumping rope forwards, or talk about backwards or reverse, which is like you're jumping rope backwards. So that's when you're in the wheel plane. When you're in the wall plane, you can say things, and these are opposite for each of us, so I'm going to turn around. You can say things like clockwise or counterclockwise when you're in the wall plane. But you have to remember, like I had to turn around to show you guys, that's about the poi relative to you. That's not about the poi relative to each other or anything else. So they kind of break down. They're useful when I'm giving instructions to you, but they're not necessarily as universal. Something that is a lot more universal is poi relative to each other. And that's when you start getting into classes of moves and movements and driving styles that are really dependent on the poi more relative to each other than anything else. So when you're doing circles, you can talk about timing and direction. So there's together time, when the poi are moving at the same time. So the poi are moving at the same time, and you can talk about split time when poi are moving in 180 degrees from each other. You can also talk about direction, where they're going same direction, or if you reverse the direction of one of them, you'll be going opposite direction. And there are 4 different timing and directions that we'll dive into later. Hey, Karen. So, timing breaks, I talked about that with circles though. Timing breaks down with pendulums, timing and direction. And then, so that's something that we'll dive into a little bit later. I'll talk about that when we're turning a little bit. And also, there is no timing and direction for a stall. It's kind of why they're a little bit wonderful. They're just there. They're a point. They are in many ways nothingness, but they're the potential for everything. So they're a universal stopping and starting point that is pretty amazing. In essence, it's the meditative moment. And it's actually something that I think is way underrated with poi, is stopping and doing things with that. So we also talked a little bit about a couple exercises at the end of last time where we would do things like switch from a pendulum to a circle. And you can do it with one poi, where you just do a pendulum, and then give it a little extra energy, and it becomes a circle. And then you can do that in the opposite direction as well. So you just pendulum. You always want to make sure whenever you're practicing, this is one of the most important things if you get out of this, is to practice with both hands in both directions. This is kind of one of those life things that is amazing to balance yourself, to force yourself to think in ways that are familiar, but somehow out of your comfort zone. And that's kind of what learning poi is. It's probably somewhat familiar, yet out of your comfort zone. Do both hands, all directions, all combinations of everything, and balance yourself out. So when we switch from pendulums to spinning, this is going to come back very, very, very quickly in what we're doing today. And do it, kind of a little bit, I'm gonna have to stand back a little more, but do it with a little more reach. I know I'm doing this in an inside sort of area to mimic if you are at home. So I'm not doing gigantic stuff. I've got a ceiling as well. But change directions, feel what it feels like to just add a little extra oomph and go from a pendulum to a circle. The other exercise I was talking about was really kind of flipping from one side to another, which is basically downstall to downstall. And it's almost like you're flipping your hair. You've got it on one side and you go flip. You flip it over. You flip it over. Or you can do it just with one, where you flip it over and you're just taking a little half circle over that top and dropping it down and trying to dampen the momentum as much as possible. Going from a stall to a stall. So those are gonna help us a lot with the turning that we are about to do. So turning with stalls. You're gonna say, what? What is turning with a stall? When you're turning, you're changing your spatial relativity to the poi. You're not changing the poi's momentum. I'm actually gonna drop one of these right now so I can be a little more expressive with this. So you've got your poi right here, and it's staying in the same spot, and you are changing yourself in relation to the poi. Try to keep your poi as still as possible in the same spot. You might want to lower it down a little bit if it feels, you started off like high and you're like, oh my gosh, after 5 minutes this is going to be crazy. But we're not going to spend 5 minutes doing this. But if you can hold your poi in as much of the same place as possible, even change hands, walk around it, express with it in different sorts of ways. There are different things that you can do with this that are actually really valuable. So if you can keep your poi in one spot and change your relationship to it, watch this. Right now, I'm standing with my poi in the wheel plane, and now I'm standing in the wall plane. I've just turned 90 degrees. And if I keep it in the same spot, I can turn and turn and turn and turn. So I've changed my relationship with the poi. I am doing turning. Here, so I'll put these next to each other. And the more you can keep them in place, the better, because you can create a lot of amazing illusions. So these are called isolations. It's the illusion of floating in space, and that's a static or fixed isolation. And like I said, that is turning with your poi. Now you're like, Hoodie, that's ridiculous. I didn't come here to learn that. Keep that in your mind conceptually and play with it. It's actually really cool. There's a lot there. So we're going to add a little momentum though. That first dimension of momentum, we're going to create a periodic pendulum. And we're going to be doing together time turning today. I talked about those different timings and directions. Right now, we're just going to focus on together time. There are different ways that you could pendulum. You could pendulum more in a chase, or you could pendulum in ways that are much more opposite. And those are very different when they cross at the bottom, versus if they're kind of more crossing at the sides. And you're gonna learn more about that in the next class with timing and direction. So, working on together though. What you wanna do is you wanna be doing a pendulum in the wheel plane. So I will turn to actually I'll do this straight on so you can see this. So I've noticed I've done this a lot because it's kind of cool because you can see the poi coming at you, whoa. So this is doing a pendulum in the wheel plane. And what I'm planning on doing is stopping right here with my hands in front of me, and then turn sideways, and then pendulum in the wall plane. Okay? So I've turned 90 degrees. Now, if you take that pause out of it, you can pendulum back in the wheel plane. And when you reach your arms out, that's when you turn 90 degrees. So you can reach and turn, reach and turn. I've done a 90-degree turn. One of the things that you're going to start noticing is your shoulders. Because right here in this plane, this is about human physiology more than anything. If you bisect yourself down the middle, there's space between your center and your shoulder. When you turn sideways, your shoulders are in a line. They're in the exact same plane. So right now, we have to adjust for the width of our shoulders. And so what's going to happen is you're going to lightly, and we'll just do this with the shoulder that's going to be crossing. So if I'm turning right, do this with your left hand. You pendulum your poi, and what's going to happen is you're going to have to give it a little bit of energy, but just let it fall to your feet. Imagine drawing a line on the floor, and then a line on your side. And just do that very, very delicately. Now you notice with your right hand, if you're turning to the right, you're probably not going to be doing that much different. It's going to kind of stay in the same line. So do that with each hand separately. And then you can do it together. So give it a little pendulum, and then just imagine drawing a line on the floor, and then you can go back, or you can go all the way to the other direction. And do 90 degrees and stop, and 90 degrees and stop, and 90 degrees and stop. So, what you might realize though, is that if you're faced this way, and you're penduluming, and you pull those stops out of it, you go from over here, so your poi all the way in front of you, and then if you turn, and while the poi are swinging by your feet, you're at 90 degrees, and then just continue that momentum till you're pointed out the other direction. So do that without actually swinging the poi, kind of guide them as stalls. So if you reach out to your left-hand side, and then just draw the poi to your feet, and then bring them to your right-hand side. Now, let's try that with a little bit of momentum, just with our left hand. So you're swinging it, because you remember, your left hand is going to cross at the beginning a little bit. And just do that with one poi, and then go backwards, and trace that same path. Feel good? And then do the same thing with your right hand. Now that's going to feel a little bit different because you're not really changing it in the first part, but in the second part, it is going to have to draw across your shoulder. And then when you've done that a few times, you can start doing them together. And this is really when you start feeling the fact that the poi are kind of doing the same thing. You're just kind of getting out of their way. Maybe nudging them a little bit, but not really. You're just getting out of the way of their momentum, letting them do their thing. Because you know what? Your poi want to do their thing. You got them moving. They're like, get out of my way. I want to do my thing. And that's one of the reasons why we go slow, especially at first. But when you get really good, don't forget to go slow too. That's dynamic. It's wonderful. So I hope this is making a little bit of sense. And then you can even kind of take those beats out of it and just allow them to pull you out and pull back. And then you can, don't forget to turn the other direction too. I'm not sure if a question just popped up. Let's see. Awesome. Lisette is doing it with mini hoops right now too. You can, so one of the amazing things, we're doing all these tutorials, doing things across different props is amazing cross training because different props will lend themselves to different things. Poi have an inherent momentum because they have this piece that is a little freer and is going to pull you in a different sort of way. But if you do these same movements with a different prop, you'll feel it and understand it physically in a different sort of way. So cross-train your props left and right. You'll realize, you'll have different realizations and epiphanies that will cross over and make you better at what you're doing. So that's with together pendulums. And you can also, so one of the things that I was talking about was you're going to cross your hand over and draw a line in front of you. One other thing that you could be doing is doing a 90-degree turn and doing something stylish. You could be splitting your body with that. Now, you couldn't necessarily easily do the next 90 degrees, but there is space for doing these different things. So it's not necessarily going to turn immediately without you bringing that shoulder over, just the smallest bit of momentum. The smallest bit of momentum. And this is one of those things that I'm going to move on to the next thing. You can do this all day long to a little bit of music when you're in your home, when you're outside, if you've got a little outside patio or deck space or parking lot. I mean, honestly, you can meditate just with this, just with, moving around a little bit with your poi, just with what you've learned today. But we're going to build. We're going to build. Like I said, learn both directions, left and right, every different permutation. We don't want any Zoolanders. I don't know if you remember Zoolander. He was a model that could only turn right. So we're going to move on to turning with circles. So we're going to do some together time circles, right? So these are together time circles. When you're in the wheel plane, just like jumping rope, right? And one of the things, this is also something you could just do forever, because you want to learn to keep your planes really, really tight. It's one of those things that people are like, oh man, I wish I drilled my planes early on and kept my planes tight. Heck, you can take some chalk, take some tape, drop it on the ground, and just feel like you're tracing it. And then do it in reverse and feel like you're tracing it. And then do it in the wall plane and feel like you're tracing them. And learn how to control those, how to let that momentum, the momentum wants to carry itself. And just keep that feeling. Keep that feeling of where they are. So, what we're going to do with together circles is we're going to go from forward. We're going to learn to spin from forward to reverse. And then from reverse to forward. Okay? Now, there's a lot of pieces to this. Some of them might look really, really familiar because in its essence, it's what we just did when you're turning from forward to reverse. So, we are going to do that with pauses, which means I'm spinning from forward, and let's say I just stop them right in front of me, right? So they're hanging out in front of me, and then I slowly step through what we just did, turning 90 degrees with hands to the bottom, and then turn 90 degrees with hands over to the other side. Okay? So imagine that you're spinning your jumping rope and you just stop with your hands out in front of you, and then slowly do that exact same thing we did, and then come out the other side. Right? And then do it with one hand at a time. Again, because remember, stop, and then you're going to have to cross your body with this one, with your kind of opposite trailing hand, and then your arms will be in front of you. Now you remember we started the class with pendulum and go to a circle, and pendulum and go to a circle, and changing directions, right? So what we're going to do with this one is we are going to be doing a circle that turns into a pendulum and then picks up again with a reverse circle, okay? So that's how we spin from forward, so over our shoulders to the ground, and try to do it as slowly as possible. And actually, we should start this off one hand at a time. So I'm going to start off with, I'm going to be turning to my right, so my left hand will be a little bit of a trailing hand. So I'm going to go slowly with my left hand, and what's going to happen is I'll pause here, bring across my body, and then go into the reverse. And that is where the momentum is going to want to take you. Because remember, we're talking about forward and reverse. That's our relationship to the poi. The poi is spinning the same darn way the whole time, right? It's spinning the same way no matter what I'm doing with it. It's doing the same thing. So I'm spinning, and let's do it with actual little slow momentum. Spinning with my left hand, I bring it across to my right and let it come up. And then I'm going in reverse. The opposite, with the other hand, we've got our right hand spinning forward, and it's going to start off kind of in a line in front of me and then cross my body to a reverse. This is one of the big things where people will get really excited. I bet half the people watching just were like, oh, I'm going to jump ahead, and you just hit yourself in the face, right? Because you kind of want to keep that energy going slowly. And what you're going to do is you're going to combine those two movements. So remember, just like before, you're just going to bring it across your body and back. So let's go, instead of full-on spinning forward, let's go from a stall, and then we'll turn to the other side, and then we'll pull into the reverse spin. So pretend like you had just been spinning over the top, and then just turn and come into reverse. That's likely to keep your planes a little bit cleaner to come into that reverse, because you won't have a lot of momentum going into it. And your planes will be kept very well in that, because you're just coming from dragging it across your body. You're not introducing any other funny movements, right? So once you've done that a few times, cross your body and into reverse. What we're going to do now is actually add that momentum at the beginning. So you're spinning forward, across your body, and reverse. And then give it a pendulum, and then move into forward, and do it. Turn from, before we were turning to our right, now we're turning to our left. Now you want to make sure that you're spinning forward before you make that change, right? That's why we're doing a pendulum and reversing. And now we're going spinning forward, right? And pendulum and reversing. Now we're spinning forward. Now I'm spinning in relation to the camera, but you can also physically turn the other direction. So like that. Okay, sound good? So, watch your relativity. Make sure that you're letting the poi move and that you're changing how you relate with them. So what we've done is we have done forward turns. I want to teach you one last thing, how to turn from reverse to forward. Because that's different. When you're spinning forward to reverse, forward it's coming over your shoulder, the momentum is over your shoulders and to the ground. That's why when we spin, we draw a line on the ground. When we turn, we draw a line on the ground. And if we stop our momentum and go to forward, we draw a line on the ground. Now, if we're spinning in reverse, the momentum is going from bottom up. So we can't force it back down to the ground. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be turning over our heads. That's why there's a little bit of a jump, because doing stalls is a little bit of an advanced move. But that's why I had you practice this, that overstall, they're down stalls where you're doing a half circle over your head, right? Because this is essentially how we're going to do that overhead turn from this side over to this side. So one thing that I kind of like to think of, I'm going to put the poi down for a second, is we are in a poster factory. Or maybe we are cheerleaders in front of a stadium of people. And we want to say, we're going to take a stack of posters over here. So we're standing over here, we're facing the stack of posters. And we want to turn to the audience and hold the poster up. Say, look at this poster. Say the things that are said on this poster. And then we turn the poster down to the other stack. And that's kind of the framing that you need to do. You're showing something and putting it on the other stack. Pick up, show, put it on the other stack. That's what we're doing. That is the physical movement. I know it's kind of a ridiculous situation to imagine, but those are physical movements that you can really understand what you're doing with that. So you pick up the poster on one side, show it, and put it down on the other side. So, same thing with this. With these stalls that we were doing, it's kind of the same thing. So, how we're going to do this is, let's do it one hand at a time. So I have my right hand, and basically I'm going to stop right here. So I'm not using too much momentum to start with, so I'm not going to be hitting myself. Reach over and over to this other side, and then I spin forward. If I take my left hand and I'm turning to the right, we'll have a slight cross that happens, and then into a line, and then I spin forward. So start in a down stall and just walk through this, and then imagine, okay, my momentum is going into a forward spin. So, and then stop and stall on this side, bring it over and over to a forward spin. Now, if you want to go really slow, we're going to start in reverse. So spin very gently. And all you're going to do is you're going to make sure that those poi reach upward. And as you feel that point of momentum pulling upward, that's that turning point. That's where you're facing, you're going from the wheel plane to the wall plane over to the wheel plane. And then instead of, you can stall and then start going reverse and go to the other side. And just keep practicing that back and forth. And if you want to string everything together, go from forward and do the floor turn, and then you're in reverse and do the ceiling turn. And floor turn, and ceiling turn. And then make sure to do it the other direction. I've been doing everything to the right, but make sure to do it to the left. Floor turn, ceiling turn. And then you can do it in a circle if you want. Floor turn, ceiling turn. You have just learned a ton of stuff in a half hour. There is so much that you can practice and take from this. I'm realizing, hey, what's up, Santos? I'm realizing there were comments down below that I wasn't seeing. So, are there any questions on that? People feeling good? I hope you're feeling good. I hope you ask me questions. I hope you practice. I hope you post videos of yourself in this thread. I'll be following the comments of this. Post videos of yourself. Say things live. Sometimes it's hard to come up with a question when you're just learning something, how to describe it. So show me a video of you. Show me your progress. Ask me as you're moving, what am I doing here with this little thing? Why do I keep hitting myself in the face? And we'll work with that. So a quick preview of what I will be covering next time we get together. I don't know the exact date, but either later this week or next week, we are going to talk about different timing and directions. So right now we've done everything in together same, right? But there's together together opposite. There is split same, and there's split opposite. And we will talk about turning with split time next time, which you may be able to piece together from some of these things. If you break down what's happening into kind of quadrants, where you turn, and then you turn, and then you turn, and then you turn, you may be able to break some of these down yourself. But I will teach you that, and I'll teach you kind of little flares, like tossing little behind the backs while you turn. And then eventually, probably the class after that, we'll get into flowers a little bit. So, and we'll get into different driving styles, because you're getting a really, really good groundwork. This is fantastic. Just keep moving with them. Keep moving with the poi every way that you can imagine, including the poi stopped, poi pendulum, poi in constant motion. Slow everything down. Do every direction. There is so much. This is magical. So thank you all for joining in. And much love to everyone. Thank you to all the jam organizers who are making magic happen. And we will see you later. And I will start answering questions that I'm seeing coming in the comments. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.